Righteousness is to be mindful of Allah. So enter your homes through their proper doors and be mindful of Allah so you may be successful. Why does Allah talk about entering the house through the back door? Because that was a practice of the people in Medina. People in Medina, after coming from Hajj, they didn't walk into their houses through the main door. They would go through the back door. Why? Because this is something that was made up by some Arabs previously, and they thought this was a sign of righteousness. They thought this was a sign of righteousness. But it has nothing. So Allah is saying, no, there's no righteousness in you doing these things. There's no righteousness. Allah is saying, enter the houses through their doors. But by the way, this statement, وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا, has become a saying in Arabic. A proverb in Arabic. وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. It means approach things appropriately. Like do things the right way. I'll give you an example. How do you do your taxes? You live in a country that has legislations, right? Has a system. You have an income. You have to declare that income. You have to file taxes. You have to pay taxes, right? And in exchange, you get benefits, you get support, etc. So these are the instructions. So usually, I get the question is, some people come and they say, I make this kind of money, but I don't want to declare it all. How do I go about, what does Islam say about this? I would say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. Right? وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. Now if you're getting extra income here, like $100 here, or a gift here, or a gift there, or something like that, maybe it's insignificant, even in the law, like it's not a big deal. That's something insignificant. But you're making a substantial income, and you want to evade tax, right? What does Islam say? Islam says, وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. Enter the house through the main gate. Do things properly. Do things properly. That's what Islam says. Really, that's what Islam says. The thing is, you might avoid your tax or evade tax. I think that's the term. So there's two terms. Evade tax and avoid tax. Evade, I think you do it legally. There are ways to do it. So you, for example, you give donations and you get tax receipts. So, okay, or you do some kind of community work. So I think you can avoid tax. That's called avoiding tax. It's legal and it saves you, from paying a lot of tax. But there's evading tax, which is you do it in a subtle way. It's basically you don't declare your income. The thing is, some people do it for a few years and they think they are okay. And usually you will end up being caught. And when you are caught, what happens? They'll chase you after every dollar. So I actually saw a lot of people who used to evade tax for many times, for years. And what happens ultimately? Maybe 7, 8 years later on, they catch them. And when they catch them, they'll make you pay for everything in the past 7 years. Everything. And they'll go hard on you. So actually, eventually, it won't work well for you. Most of the people I've seen done this, they end up having to declare bankruptcy. Most of the people I've seen, go through this process. So it's better to do things, in the best way possible. Some people want to get into, they want, for example, landing, or they want papers here. So they start making up stuff. It's better to do things the right way. It's better to do things the right way. So some people get a marriage that is fake, like a fake marriage, just on paper, right? Well, وَأْتُوا الْبُيُوتَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِهَا. Like, now if you've done that in the past, it's over, but we're just talking about the future. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about jihad. What does Allah say? Allah says, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Allah is saying, fight in the cause of Allah only against those who wage war against you, but do not exceed the limits. Surely Allah does not like the transgressors. That's why first jihad was prescribed. For what? For defense. For defense. Muslims could not initiate war. They were only given permission to defend themselves. Only given permission to defend themselves. And Allah is saying He does not like the transgressors. And Allah says, with regards to those who transgress against you, Allah is saying, وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَأَخْرِجُوهُمْ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُمْ وَالْفِتْنَةُ أَشَدُّ مِنَ الْقَتْلِ وَلَا تُقَاتِلُوهُمْ عِنْدَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ حَتَّى يُقَاتِلُوكُمْ فِيهِ فإن قاتلوكم فاقتلوهم كذلك جزاء الكافرين فإن انتهوا فإن الله غفور رحيم وقاتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ويكون الدين لله فإن انتهوا فلا عدوان إلا على الظالمين الشهر الحرام بالشهر الحرام والحرمات قصاص فمن اعتدى عليكم فاعتدوا عليه بمثل ما اعتدى عليكم واتقوا الله واعلموا أن الله مع المتقين وأنفقوا في سبيل الله ولا تلقوا بأيديكم إلى التهلكة وأحسنوا إن الله يحب المحسنين. So Allah here is talking about jihad. Let me read the translations. Allah is saying, kill them wherever you came upon them and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you. From which they have driven you out. By the way, what is this called? What is this called? There's a name for this. It's been named, this verse has been named by some Orientalists and some people who drive the false propaganda against Islam. I want to show you, by the way, and I'll give you an example. Hey guys, listen, you are the younger ones specifically. As you grow up, you will end up hearing accusations against Islam. Some people will say Islam spread by the sword. Islam forces some people to become Muslim. Islam abuses women. Islam does not recognize human rights, okay? You guys have to be smart. You have to understand your religion, your book, and you have to understand how people make lies about it. So this verse, وَاقْتُلُوهُمْ حَيْثُ ثَقِفْتُمُوهُمْ وَأَخْرِجُوهُم مِّنْ حَيْثُ أَخْرَجُوكُمْ. Okay, how does it translate? Kill them wherever you find them, and drive them out of the places from which they have driven you out. What do they call this? People who lie against the Quran, what do they call this? They call it the verse of the sword. This is the verse of the sword. That's what they call it. And you will find someone who comes to you, by the way, they do that often. You'll see it in talk shows, in the news sometimes. They will say, hey, the Quran says, kill them wherever you find them. Kill them wherever you find them and kick them out or drive them out of the places from where they have driven you out. How do you respond? How do you respond?
What was the context of it?
Exactly. Now we're in the context. Just read the verse before it. Read the verse before it. We just read the verse before. What does the verse before it say? It says, وَقَاتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَكُمْ وَلَا تَعْدَدُوا. Allah is saying, fight in the cause of Allah only against those who wage war against you, but do not exceed the limits. You see, these people who quote this verse and they call it the verse of the sword, they only quote it out of context. You just need to put it in the context and recite the verse before it. What does Allah say? Fight only against the people who fight you. That's what Allah is saying. So to take it out of context is a lie, is a misinterpretation. So you guys, that's what they call the verse of the sword. Be careful. It's Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 191. Okay, keep that in mind. They call this, falsely, the verse of the sword. And when they quote it, if anyone quotes it to you and says, listen, the Quran says, kill them wherever you find them and drive them out from wherever they drove you out. Tell them, okay, read the verse before it. Before you say anything, just read the verse before it. And then it becomes clear. There's a context. Alright? Okay. Then Allah is saying, persecution is far worse than killing. Because these people of Quraysh, they persecuted the Muslims, trying to push them away from Islam. Allah is saying, this is greater than killing. And do not fight them at the sacred mosque, which is the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, unless they attack you there. Why? Because the sacred mosque. You're not supposed to fight there. You're not supposed to shed blood there. That is the reward of, and if they do so, like if they fight you in the masjid, you fight them back, this is the reward of the disbelievers. But if they cease, Allah is saying again, if they don't fight you, again that's the context. If they hold back and they don't fight you, then surely Allah is all forgiving, most merciful. Again, if they don't fight you, you don't fight them. It's clear. So anyone who quotes for you what the so-called verse of the sword, tell them just all you need to do, put it in context. And it's clear. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is clarifying further about, so this is talking about those who already attacked the Muslims and they were in a state of war with them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, fight against them, and it talks here about Quraysh, right? Fight against them if they persecute you until there is no more persecution. وَقَاتِلُهُمْ حَتَّى لَا تَكُونَ فِتْنَةً. Why? Because all of these forces, Quraysh and everyone who allied themselves with Quraysh, they were fighting against the Muslims, trying to push them back or push them away from Islam. So Allah is saying, fight them until they don't push you, until they stop persecuting you. And religion and your devotion will be to Allah alone. So you are free to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and people are free to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.